Care Bears is definitely different though to what it was 45 years ago, and I think that's really important as a brand owner, is making sure that you are relevant for today. I'm a 1985 baby and grew up with Care Bears. My mum loves to remind me that I had a full Care Bears room with bedspread wallpaper, you name it.
I think there is a trend across the entire licensing world right now. Why do you think nostalgic brands are doing so well in licensing right now?
I think it depends on the brand. It felt like the brand had been kind of simmering since its relaunch in 2019. People are gravitating towards brands that had an emotional connection for them as a child. We are working on a new feature film with Warner Brothers.
What are the things that you're evaluating? What are you sort of like looking for? And
authenticity is absolutely fundamental.
Are you doing anything with Swift-Heart Rabbit in the future?
Watch this space.
What is your favorite Care Bear? I'm gonna force you to choose one. You can only choose one. Who's your favorite? After 45 years, Care Bears remains one of licensing's most enduring success stories. From surviving industry changes to reinventing itself for new generations, this nostalgic brand has mastered the art of multi-generational appeal. For me personally, Care Bears holds a special meaning. I received Swift-Heart Rabbit the day I was born, and it became my most treasured companion. Charlotte Payne, VP of International Licensing at Cloudco, has overseen Care Bear's global expansion, launching unexpected collaborations with Hello Kitty, Barbie, and K-pop stars. Today, she reveals how nostalgic brands stay relevant and why authenticity matters more than ever in licensing. Before we dive into today's show, I wanted to share something really exciting with you. For the first time ever, I'm opening my vault of nearly 20 years of licensing experience through my online course, Learn to License. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up your licensing game, this is everything I wish I'd known when I began my journey. From deal structures to finding the right license, knowing if you're ready and how to pitch like a pro, it's all there. The fundamentals that separate successful licensors from everyone else. Visit learntolicense.com and let's get you from curious to confident. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Charlotte, this is a real pinch me moment because Care Bears is a brand that means a lot to me. I was given a Care Bears cousin, Swift-Heart Rabbit, by my grandma on the day I was born, and it became the toy that I would not let out of my sight. And that was almost 40 years ago, and Care Bears are as popular as ever all over the world. So I'm really excited to talk to you about everything Care Bears. So Charlotte, thanks for joining us on Born to License.
Of course, thanks.
So Charlotte, you've been at Cloudco for just over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what initially drew you to the Care Bears brand?
Similar to you, I'm a 1985 baby and grew up with Care Bears. My mum loves to remind me that I had a full Care Bears room with bedspread wallpaper, you name it. So I think what's really fascinating about Care Bears is obviously we're seeing a huge nostalgia anyway from the brand. And obviously, you know, having that nostalgia is core to people really understanding the brand and having that emotional connection, which, you know, Care Bears is such an emotive brand anyway, that I think what it's really helping us do is also pivot and speak to younger audiences. So we have that kind of parent endorsement that had a love. What excited me though about coming to Cloudco was it felt like the brand had been kind of simmering since its relaunch in 2019. And actually I could just see the potential of where it could go. We were already starting to see interest coming up in Asia, and Australia is obviously a huge market. So what was really exciting is that you can only see growth potential from that. Part of what I love about this industry is rejuvenating brands and taking brands that maybe have sat on the shelf for a little while that have a real opportunity to come back in a meaningful way. So yeah, I was excited to take on this challenge.
I bet. And you mentioned nostalgia, and I think that there is a trend across the entire licensing world right now where sort of evergreen, generationally loved brands, nostalgic brands, are just having a huge moment that doesn't seem like it's going to end. Why do you think nostalgic brands are doing so well in licensing right now?
I don't know. It's really interesting. I think it depends on the brand. I think Peanuts has had a great moment. They've brought back with a big anniversary year. Um, you know, Hello Kitty in some respects has come back through that kind of nostalgia as well. And we're talking about brands that have had quite a big impact in licensing and retail. I think that whether it's post-COVID, we talk about a lot of this internally of kind of, why nostalgia is playing such an important part. And I think it's fascinating to see that post-COVID, people have gravitating towards brands that had an emotional connection for them as a child, or just brands that they know and they trust, or that, we're talking about a generation that also wants to pass down that brand love to their kids as well. So I think it's really interesting to see how nostalgia brands have made a comeback. But I think they're also just great brands that have maybe stood the test of time and just have an opportunity to come back in a different way. Care Bears is definitely different though to what it was 45 years ago, and I think that's really important as a brand owner, is making sure that you are relevant for today. And I think we're seeing that as a success because we're being able to talk to a multi-generational audience. So yes, we have the nostalgia and the kind of millennial original fans of Care Bears, but also how we show up with new content on TikTok has kind of opened more of a Gen Z, teen and tween kind of demo. I think Care Bears in its nature is a plush toy and bear that people love to cuddle, and it's colourful, and I think so that seems to be resonating as well from a younger demo. So I think the interesting thing with nostalgia brands is that they can gravitate in a different way to new audiences and kind of serve a purpose. But yeah, it's fascinating to see how they've kind of made big comebacks.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some really the brands that I had top of mind when I'm thinking nostalgia. I do think Care Bears, I do think Peanuts, I do think Hello Kitty, all three of those brands. I also think a Strawberry Shortcake and those kind of properties are just really popular. I love what you mentioned about sort of like, parents sharing Care Bears, sort of like handing down that love to the new generation, which is a big part of it as well. You look at like a brand like Star Wars, for example. You see all these little kids running around with Star Wars, and they're not Star Wars fans. Their mum and dad have bought that product for them because they're Star Wars fans. So there is a part of that as well, is that you're appealing to the parents who you want them to introduce Care Bears to them because they love and cherish the brand.
Yeah, definitely. I think a big part of our business is still adult and what we would classify as kidult. The world of kidult as well, I think, is quite a hot topic at the moment in licensing. The whole collectible trend, look at retailers like Pop Mart and Miniso, that, this blind box collectible market, whether it's partners like Bear Brick, for example, they're all tapping into that kidult market. I know it's also extending beyond that. But I think it's definitely been a key to unlocking how we bring back Care Bears. So, I think this was before my time, but, Robbie and the team have really kind of looked at, bringing back classic as much as we brought back the new look. And I think that's been a pivotal part in looking at how we extend the reach of Care Bears. The new look is, based on the new TV series Unlock the Magic, but the classic look is what people remember. And I think, it's interesting even now to see 5 years later, classic still plays an important part of our business, certainly on soft lines, and how we build out our apparel programs. And that's again because it goes across all those multi-generational audiences. So yeah, it's really fascinating to see. But we have some real diehard fans out there. So we also have an expectation, and I think this is what brands mustn't forget, is there are diehard fans that remember a brand in a certain way and have expectations as well about how you show up for them. So I think even some of the collabs we've done are really interesting as well, like how nostalgia brands can come together. We did the Hello Kitty collab in the US. That's going to start rolling out internationally from this year. It's that kind of surprise and delight aspect too. I think how brands show up in a different way, in a way that excites fans, especially the nostalgia fans, because Strawberry Shortcake was part of the American Greetings original heritage of Care Bears as well. Both greetings cards brands that, which is how a lot of brands formed many, many years ago. So I think, it's really interesting to see how brands like you mentioned, even Strawberry Shortcake, are kind of reinventing themselves and figuring out ways to kind of be relevant. The world has changed in 45 years. So, I think brands also have to adapt and make sure that they're relevant for today.
There's a few things you mentioned, Charlotte, that I really want to dig into more. One thing that I've been paying very close attention to is the collaborations you've been doing with other licensors. So you've worked with Strawberry Shortcake, Sesame Street. Tell me a bit more about sort of the thinking behind why you're doing that and the response you've been getting.
Well, the response has been way beyond our expectations. I would definitely say some of the collabs have worked better than others. I think, this is a new area. If you'd said to me 10 years ago, studios are going to work with other studios, even Hasbro working with Mattel, like that would have been like an absolute no-go area. So I think there's two ways that we've approached collabs. One is IP collaboration. So I think there's a very different approach to how we've looked at those. Like, are there key alignments from a brand DNA? Do we have kind of shared audiences? Is it about tapping into new audiences? I think the surprise and delight aspect is something that we've really wanted to dive into. Like, how do you show up in a different way? Unless you're a big movie property now that's got a big release cinema day or a new TV series day, it's really hard to compete in the licensing space. So I think these collabs offer real great marketing tools to show up in a different way. And I think with the combination that people want to collect something, that collectability is bigger than ever right now. So I think us creating something that only has a really short shelf life has also been really interesting to watch how fans engage. So, the Hello Kitty one in the US, for example, was only live for like 6 months. And once it's gone, it's gone. And so that frenzy feeling that people have to get it now while they can and collect it, I think was also really interesting to watch. I think the other collabs that we look at is toy collaborations, and we're starting to look at this in publishing. How kind of ways can we work with big brands in this space to create something unique? And we did that with Barbie this year. We launched a Barbie collection of blind cylinder Barbies. So there was 3 to collect. We've got another 3 coming autumn winter this year. It's part of Mattel's strategy with Barbie to do on their Cutie Reveal series. So this was actually their first license that they did on the Cutie Reveal series, and it hit #1 of their Barbie globally. So it was the #1 selling doll globally. So I think there's definitely ways that you can collaborate with people, whether that's like on a toy collaboration or whether on an IP collaboration that does create something really unique and different to the market. We're seeing the same on gaming, us working with really big games, but to create meaningful extensions to that as well is really fascinating. We did that with our first Roblox game this year as well. So I think I would be surprised if more and more people aren't starting to do this. I think it makes a really interesting part of any like brand and marketing strategy. So you'll definitely see more of them coming from us, some unexpected, some probably more expected. We've just launched the Wicked collaboration, which Ariana Grande actually posted about, which is amazing. And that one's really just a plush program. But that, some definitely are tailored to that, kid adult market. Some are younger. So again, for us, tactically, we look at, with the other IP owner, what's it going to bring to the brand? How do we open up a new audience or a new space at retail? How do we maybe cement some of those partnerships that we have already? So there's quite a lot that goes into thinking about the IPs that we collaborate with.
I love how you mentioned surprise and delight your fan base, essentially.
Yeah.
Because you want to try and engage with them in as many different ways as possible. When you're in the gaming space, that's like surprising that people see Care Bears there and have the opportunity to engage with the brand in that space. And then, the partnerships with Wicked and Sesame Street and so forth. Again, it's just another way to give them an opportunity to get excited about the brand and consume it in a very different way. I want to shift gears a little bit because a lot of those listening to this podcast have never pitched for a license before. They're interested in licensing. They don't know where to start. They've, maybe got a small business, a product line. They're maybe direct to consumer. Maybe they're, wanting to service some retailers. When a company approaches you about licensing Care Bears, what are the things that you're evaluating? What are you sort of like looking for? And walk me through a decision-making process.
I think there's quite a lot that goes into that, actually. I think firstly, whenever we're talking to a prospective partner, it's always about whether they see the vision that we see. And I think having that alignment is really key. I think authenticity is absolutely fundamental to everything we do. So like, does the product category make sense? Does the partner make sense? Does the market make sense? I think, we have very strong values for the franchise, around care, joy, that emotional connection. So they play important parts in any decision making we have. Obviously we have a clear strategy of where we want to go with the brand, and I think for us, it's about figuring out whether that partner's, A, sees the same potential, but B, whether they have the right reach as well. I think for us, we're always looking at how we open up new categories, whether we can service a particular retail account. And that's all the way from mass to speciality to luxury. And I think, a lot plays into that is, are they a preferred vendor? We think a lot of retail first. So that's an important part of any consideration is, how does that partner, work with different retailers? Are they a preferred supplier? And a lot of the time retailers will share with us, their preferred suppliers. But I think also I would put a lot of stuff on innovation and, creativity. If a product is incredible or it stands out as a completely new product to the market, we're always excited about that. We've just done a Care Bears virtual pet, which I think is really fascinating. It plays into that nostalgia of like the Tamagotchi and that virtual pet piece, but it has totally new technology. It has a really different way of engaging with different demos, different levels. So again, I think innovation plays an important part. If there's a really cool, unique product as well, that's definitely something that excites us.
And what about e-commerce companies? You mentioned like retail and being preferred vendor and, having that kind of retail distribution is important for those kind of prospects. What about the e-commerce side of things? What are you looking for? Are you looking for, to see what kind of engagement they're getting on socials, or are you looking at sales projections? Are you looking at, what is it that you're focused on?
E-commerce is a really interesting retail channel at the moment. I think, Amazon's played an important part. We have a very, very unique working relationship with Amazon to look at not only how we can build out a kind of bigger marketing strategy with them, but also how we actually support licensees. And I think that's really important. But yeah, I mean, e-commerce plays an important part. It's a huge percentage of where people shop now. We're also seeing that on social commerce as well. So how we work with partners across TikTok stores, you've got influencers built into that now on social media. We have a high engagement on social media too. So, even things like TikTok has helped us open up an appetite for health and beauty. So it's really fascinating to see how e-commerce, social commerce is also having an impact. So they're definitely parts of any discussions that we would have with prospective partners. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and know the whole world of how TikTok's social commerce works, but it is fascinating to see how influencers are just having such an impact on how people are consuming brands, how they're purchasing, having that direct click as well. It's so easy now to purchase online versus making that choice going into a retail store. So I think you're going to probably see more in that space from us. But certainly I think in the licensing industry as a whole.
Yeah. And let's say someone comes to you with a proposal, they want to get a Care Bears license.
Yeah.
In terms of the way they approach you and what they present to you, is there anything that could be like an immediate red flag that comes to your mind?
I think if there's no alignment with the brand, or it feels like dare I say, like a label slap, I think that for us is a bit off-putting. Anything you do at retail, anything you do at product has to have a storytelling. I think consumers now see through something that isn't authentic or doesn't feel true to a brand. So I think that certainly would be something that we would consider as a red flag. I think, we're always mindful of, how much you put out into the market too. Obviously licensing has a big revenue commercial component into any consideration, but also you don't want to flood the market. So I think if someone was pitching volume or over storytelling or that kind of brand alignment, I think that would be a big flag for us. We do heavily look at people's product quality, how they execute at retail, how they bring that storytelling through to retail. So if there were things like that we felt, weren't aligned with what we wanted, that probably would be a red flag as well. But I'll be honest, we typically work with best-in-class licensees, so it's very rare that you would come up, to a partner or get to that evaluation as part of any discussion that it feels like a red flag at that point.
Yeah. And I guess, like, for example, you would also want to make sure that there's no conflict with your existing portfolio.
Of course. Yeah, that goes without saying.
If somebody comes to you and they're like, oh, we want to do, this particular toy, and you already have a great partner that's doing that. Yep. You're not gonna want to entertain that other opportunity.
We're very big on not going after dual licensing. So that is definitely not something we would want to do for sure. That plays an important part really into also, how partners compete with competitors as well. Everyone's always wanting to, look at the hottest brands, but, we've had a lot of licensees that we've also stayed loyal to, that have been on this journey since Care Bears, completely came back, in 2019. So I think it's again about building that loyalty with partners. We do try and really approach any licensee as a partnership that we, if they win, we win. And I think that's kind of the ambition. We want to get to a renewals business. We don't want to be, pitching new licensees all the time. So again, I think we evaluate quite heavily, like what's the long-term opportunity as much as it is about a short-term.
A quick pause here. If what we're discussing is really resonating with you, you're going to love what I've put together in Learn to License. This isn't just another course. It's 2 decades of real-world licensing experience distilled into actionable strategies you can use immediately. I've worked with everyone from startups to Fortune 500 brands, and the patterns for success success are surprisingly consistent. The course covers all things that you need to consider when it comes to licensing, particularly those who are just starting out. So visit learntolicense.com. Your future licensing deals will thank you. All right, back to our conversation. I have been quoted as saying there is no better deal in licensing than a renewal. Everyone loves a renewal because it means everybody, the licensor, the licensee, everyone involved, because it means it was a success.
Exactly.
And it can be a much simpler legal process, and you just use the momentum that you've already built together and keep going for another 2 or 3 years or however long the renewal term will be.
Yeah.
So looking ahead,
Yep.
are there any particular partnerships that you're most excited about to explore with Care Bears? Is there any category that you feel is untapped? Is there any momentum behind a certain area that you're really keen to explore?
Absolutely. I have an exceptional team, and I'm very, very lucky that we work in such an exceptional team and a very entrepreneurial team. I think we're a team that has come from brands that have always had to think differently and think creatively about how you can move into different spaces. And I actually, that's part of what I love about licensing, that you can move into spaces and places that maybe licensing isn't even a thing or a terminology that certain categories use. We are definitely building out our publishing program. I think for us, having a much more of an opportunity to storytell through publishing. I know a lot of people talk about, publishing is a really tough space right now and people are buying less books. I actually think there's nothing better than that magical moment when you read your kids' stories at night and, early readers, and how you can be a positive brand. I think we want to definitely do more in that emotive learning space. Like, how can we be a brand that really helps educate families and children in a bigger way, with a bigger purpose? And I think that's where Care Bears can really sit in a different way. It can actually be more than just a bear and emotions. How can we actually be a positivity to understanding your feelings and emotions? So I think that you're definitely going to see more of us in that space. I think collectability is still a huge part of our business. So I think we're always looking at ways that we can show up differently and with the kind of key partners that we look at. But I think the next thing and shift you're going to see is, how do people get more up close and personal with the brand? So I think definitely experiences are going to be, and that world of, how do we tap into the sensory experience? How do we look at exciting ways that, you can live and breathe the world of care a lot, or get a little bit of a snapshot of what it's like to be in a Care Bears world. So I think that definitely feels really exciting about where we're going as a brand. We've got some really exciting partnerships coming up in that space from next year. And I think, we've got our 45th anniversary. A lot of people talk about anniversaries as a big milestone in this industry, and I think it is. But we're excited about what we have got planned coming up. It's not going to be a typical anniversary year. It's going to be a moment to bring something back for the diehard fans. So we're going to be bringing back something really exciting, which I think definitely you'll find exciting as well, given the history you have with the brand.
Okay. I'm very excited.
So sorry to tease, but yeah, you're definitely going to be seeing more, I think, both that service the nostalgia of the brand, but also new audiences. So we're really excited to expand toy and what that means next year as well. But certainly experience that more storytelling, how that extends into different categories, different retail accounts, will definitely be the focus for us over the next 12 months.
So 45 years is 2026 or 2027?
It's 2027. So you'll know that this licensing industry works very much 12 months in advance. So we're already coming out of LA toy previews where they're selling for autumn winter 26, which is crazy but exciting. So yeah, 45th is 2027. So yeah, it's shaping up to be an exciting year. Beyond that, the world of Care Bears, we are working on a new feature film with Warner Brothers. there's no official greenlit date, so I can't share anything on that. But I think given the respect and the brand's deep and long history, I think now feels like the best time to bring something exciting and new, like a feature film. So that's definitely something as we look further ahead. And then I think, how we reach fans in every market globally is a key part of my day to day. So leading international, the brand resonates differently in Latin America as it does in Asia and Europe and Middle East. So again, as long as we shift and be culturally relevant, I think that's a big part of what you'll see in the future of Care Bears. More color, more positivity. Let's remind people that there's brands out there that can appeal to multi-generations. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun brand to be working on.
Totally. There's a few things you mentioned there just about the practicalities of licensing, right? And you said, the anniversary is coming up in 2027 and people are already starting to work on that now. I think that some people listening to this podcast who are not familiar with licensing, they may be just starting to get to know it, will be pretty surprised. I mean, date of recording is September. You're already working on 2027. I think they would be surprised. We get a lot of companies come to us and they say, well, when would you like, your first licensed product to be out? And they say, oh, we would like to get it out in 2 or 3 months. And they don't understand that, there is a, quite a lengthy process from the moment you engage with a licensor to the product going on shelf or being available. Can you share a little bit about sort of like what happens between that first conversation and the product getting on shelf? There's a lot that happens there.
There is.
Can you share it?
I mean, I probably won't cover it all, David, but it depends on the category. So I think we're a lean enough business that we have the ability to pivot and move quite quickly. Not as quickly as we probably used to, just because of the number of partners and partnerships we have. But when you start talking to a licensee, I mean, that launch date of how they see when this is launching, I think has to be realistic. There's quite a lot that goes involved in even just product creation, assets, how a partner works through that product development. Before that, you've even got how are we going to, what does the deal look like? What's the future kind of planning of how they, how that partner wants to launch, what retailers, what markets, then, going through a negotiation on whether that's terms or brand fees, etc. And then I think once that's shaped up, you kick off that product development and approvals, which in its nature can take as long as a piece of string. I think, a 3D toy product would be a much different to a soft-lined 2D print. So we're fortunate enough, we've got a lot of style guides and assets that people could, but also just having their designers take time to look through that or have an onboarding with us. And then you've got, anything from a manufacturing point of view, which is very much down to that licensee of how long things take for them. But we have been able to turn things around fairly quickly. I think if there is an opportunity and we have, there's a particular time frame that a partner wants, I think it's just about being open and honest from the outset of those expectations and whether or not we as a brand owner can hit it. So anyone entering into the world of licensing, it's such a fun industry. But it also depends on the brand owner, I think, and how they operate. Having come from some of the big studios, how they operate is so differently to, smaller companies like ourselves. So I think, any licensee that's looking at brands, I think has to consider that, especially if they've got particular short-term partnerships that they want to launch. Bigger studios work slower than, so I think that also should be part of anyone's consideration on what brands they work with.
Yeah, and it's very much, a partnership in every sense of the word, isn't it? Like, you want your licensee to be transparent with you and say, hey, Charlotte, we would like to go live at at this time of the year, in time for the holidays or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can have that conversation early on to see, is it actually going to be achievable? And, if it is, where do we kind of need to rush things, or, where will we be able to sort of make tweaks to our sort of process to make sure we can get that product to market? The product development stage can be complex, and we do have a podcast episode this season with Jenna Chalkley, who's head of product development globally at Born to License, and so she's given a lot of insight into that. So if you're interested in product development and you're listening to this podcast and you want more detail on that, then look out for that episode. Something you mentioned, Charlotte, was cultural impact.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm speaking to you right now from Brazil, where I know that Care Bears is not known as Care Bears here. It's known as Ursinhos Carinhosos.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how do you work with a brand that you need to adapt on like a global level? Because I noticed that Care Bears or Ursinhos Carinhosos is so popular here. It's popular in Australia, where I grew up. It's popular in the UK, in London, where I lived for 6 years.
Yeah.
It's popular in the US, where I visit a lot. I mean, it's very much a global brand. But how do you manage that?
I think you have to. It's all about local execution. You can have a global brand. I mean, lots of people use the word glocal, and you have this global brand, but unless you're talking to the local market, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Australia, whether it's France, where in France people don't know what Care Bears is, they know what Le Bissinu is. It's part of the heritage of the brand. So I think you naturally have to play to your strengths. What is the brand awareness and heritage, and understanding that on a local level is really fundamental. And it's also part of what's going to make or break success for a brand. So I think, understanding those nuances to a brand and how that is built into the nostalgia and the heritage of a brand as well is really, really important. We do a lot of insight and research as well into local markets, and what the brand stands for, how it resonates culturally. There's even certain bears that just don't work in certain markets because, for example, in Asia, a particular color might have its own cultural relevance. So again, and we've got 120 bears, so it's over 120, I think now. So it's always just about finding the right mix and the right approach. And cultural relevance is really important to know how a brand will speak to a local market. So whether it's a name change or whether it's, an approach on how a bear is named or the personality, all of those things are things that we think about.
Let's talk about licensing agents, because I know you've got, a portfolio of amazing licensing agents that help you engage and run the Care Bears licensing business in their local markets.
Yep.
Talk a bit about how important those relationships are.
I would say they're probably one of the most important relationships we have. We as a team, my kind of philosophy on agents is they're an extension of us. They're on the ground talking to prospective, current licensees, retailers every day about the brand. We do really work with best-in-class agents. So I think that's very much how we approach it, that, they're a part of our team, and how we can make sure that they've got the right tools, that they can feel the passion and they're on board with the vision that we have for the brand as well. There's obviously day-to-day things that they also do with us in whether that's legal support or creative approval support and all of the other things that, can help speed up the process, and support the licensees on the ground. But yeah, we work with exceptional agents across the market. So we have an agent in every single market. And it definitely helps us, further reach, but also make sure that we're, I don't speak every language, so being able to have agents that also talk in local language is fundamental. And also these agents have, amazing relationships already. Typically they'll be managing multiple brands that they have very, very strong relationships with. So as it's a great way of partnering with a partner that has local expertise. And that's kind of our approach from a CloudCo perspective.
Yeah, and I guess even if you know the Care Bears brand back to front and you know the UK market, Charlotte, because that's where you're based.
Yeah.
If we were to pick you up and drop you in Brazil, say, hey, you're going to manage Latam, you probably wouldn't know where to start because you don't have the relationships or understand the market as well as your local agent. So it makes perfect sense for you to have an agent where you happily pay them a commission. They'll do all that local engagement. It's not just about not having the bandwidth. It's also they've got that local expertise.
Absolutely.
That can really continue to grow the Care Bears business in those markets.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they are definitely experts in their own market. I like to think in my time within licensing, I've got a fairly good understanding, and I'm a big firm believer in traveling out to a market. I think that's really important, not only to support the agents that we have on the ground, but also just to understand the market. I'm sure you living in Brazil, the Brazilian market is so different to what it was 5-10 years ago. So, a market evolves. It's no different to the UK or France or Australia. Any parts of the world, are also evolving markets. So I think it's really important that, agents also feel supported. I think that's a big part, and having that local understanding of a market truly helps, especially when you're looking at deals or new categories or even new retailers. Pop Mart is a great example of that, or Minnesota, completely new retailers to the global landscape, and have actually shifted retail in a lot of ways. A lot of retailers are keeping their eyes now on those particular retailers just to see what they're doing. They're kind of perceived as trendsetters now. So it's really interesting to see how different retail is also shifting different markets. So I'm probably spend most of my time on an airplane and traveling and looking at what's going on in a market, which personally I think is the best way of understanding culturally and also the landscape of the market, which puts everything else in context. So definitely the last 12 months I've spent a lot of time in Asia, but that's a big part of of understanding a global brand and how you support that network of agents as well.
Yeah, I've been seeing what you're doing in Asia, and it's incredible. I mean, tell me a little bit about how your fans in Asia are engaging with the brand a bit differently. Like I've just seen activations there that are so unique to that market.
I think that market is really unique. We do a lot with K-pop bands, which actually has quite a big appeal globally. We've just launched an amazing collaboration with a girl band called Islet, where it's actually being driven out of Japan. But they're like a very up and coming K-pop band. So we've done a full integration and a music video and pop-up retail with them. And that really resonates extraordinarily across Asia. We do a lot of celebrity seeding with the influencers, but Asia also has the ability to do things on scale, and I think that's really exciting. We launch cafes there, we're launching pop-up retail that just is incredible in terms of its execution. Mall events, Christmas events, it just, and things switch on very quickly there. So typically, I mentioned sometimes things do take a long time. They really don't take a long time in Asia. Things move really quickly. So I think that market is definitely, very different in its nature in terms of how openly and willingly people, partner with Care Bears. Care Bears is also is just a very cute and cuddly brand, which just resonates exceptionally well with that market. But we work really hard to engage on social platforms. Social is a huge part of what makes or breaks a brand in Asia. So we do a lot on the local, like, Chinese platforms as well, and we'll be definitely doing more of that. But there are some fascinating brands, and we've done a collab just with Astro Boy, which is a huge brand in Asia, to really show up in a unique way just for that market. So it definitely takes a different type of approach. It's definitely a young adult approach for us, but it's also an incredible market for Care Bears. It's our second largest region, so it's what works in Asia doesn't always work everywhere else, but it definitely does seem to be, we're seeing some great success there.
Very true. So, Charlotte, before we wrap up, I have 2 more questions for you. This first one, please don't hate me for it. What is your favorite Care Bear? There's 120 bears. You've got such an amazing portfolio of characters. I'm going to force you to choose one. You can only choose one. Who's your favorite?
Well, actually, that's an easy one for me. So, because everyone in the team has to have a Care Bear. So I do take on Cheer Bear. She's in the original lineup. She's actually the bear that I had as a kid. So for me, that was an easy one. But I also, I just love everything that she stands for. She's a larger than life character. She's very much the cheerleader of the group, and I think when anyone talks to me or my team, like, you'll see the passion of Care Bears. All of us are like fans in our own way. Have you got Cheer there?
Isn't it Cheer?
That's Cheer. Yeah, that's the one of the, like, original look. Yeah. Yeah, she's my alter ego that I aspire to, David. That's for sure.
Oh, very good. Well, my last question is, I need to know, you talked about your childhood favorite.
Yeah.
My childhood favorite is Swift-Heart Rabbit. Are you doing anything with Swift-Heart Rabbit in the future?
Watch this space. Yeah.
Oh, how exciting! I did see that that you did release a few years ago, I think, in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
It was the plush sort of came back, and it sold out almost immediately. I couldn't get my hands on it.
It did. We've done a bit of a test in Australia. We've got some we have released some cousins. So Swift-Heart Bunny is definitely part of the cousins lineup. For anyone who doesn't know the context of Care Bears, we absolutely right. Like, we did it as a limited edition, like 3,000 pieces. We actually did Noble Heart Horse last year as a one-off, exclusive to Australian Post. And she sold out almost immediately. And she now goes for $700 on eBay. So you're not the only one who's a diehard fan who's been asking for the cousins to come back. So yeah, all I can say is watch this space. Hopefully you'll hear more in the coming months.
I'll be watching very closely. Charlotte, if anybody wants to see what you're up to, what's the best way to connect?
I mean, catch us up on LinkedIn for sure. But we'll be at Brand Licensing Europe, stand B201, and we're also sponsoring the Retail Lounge. So whether you're a retailer or a licensee, definitely come and see us. We're one of the most approachable team out there. We love networking and making new connections. So yeah, please reach out to me or one of my team.
Wonderful. Well, Charlotte, as a lifelong Care Bears fan myself, and I literally say lifelong fan from the day I was born, I've really, really enjoyed this chat. So thank you so much for joining us on the Born to License podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Born to License podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're eager to learn more about licensing, I encourage you, take a look at my course, Learn to License. I've condensed almost 20 years of learning in my licensing career to help others understand how licensing works. And as a reward for sticking around, here is a discount code for you to put in. That code is Born to License 25. I hope to see you there.